Hi, I'm Ric Edelman, and this is The Truth About Money. Coming up on today's show, do you really want to spend $30,000 a year on a college education?
We have a 15-year mortgage, and we pay an extra, one or two extra mortgage payments every year.
But if I do that, I won't have any money. Well, you don't have any money now, you just don't know it.
I get a lot out of it in my soul and in my heart.
My investments are really scattered.
That's all coming up right here, right now on The Truth About Money. You have it, you hate it, and you're doing everything you can to get rid of it as fast as possible. What am I talking about? Your mortgage, of course. I wonder, what are you doing to get rid of your mortgage? Well, we asked people out on the street that question, and here's what they told us.
We have a 15-year mortgage, and we pay an extra, one or two extra mortgage payments every year.
I feel like I'm paying the loan off sooner and paying less interest in the long run to the bank.
No, I've paid it off.
If you live in it long enough to pay it off, then you got to rebuild it.
When you get to be my age, it's good not to have outstanding debts.
I'm part of this little economical debacle, so the money's not there.
We had reduced from 30 to 15 and refinanced because we were doing some other rental property and kind of worked them in together.
Well, guess what? Everything that they said is completely wrong. That's right, the truth is that you should not have a 15-year mortgage, and instead you should have a 30-year loan. You should not be making extra mortgage payments, and you should not be participating in a bi-weekly mortgage plan. Instead, you need a fixed-rate 30-year loan. Make the normal monthly payment and nothing else. Why? Because the goal in life is to create wealth, and that's not the same as merely paying off debt. When you create wealth, you can handle most any financial issue, medical problem, job loss, college bills, whatever. If you have assets, you can handle the problem. But if all you're trying to do is pay off your mortgage so that one day you're free of that payment, well, what will you do if in the meantime you lose your job? Or if your kids or spouse incur big medical bills? When you give money to your lender, you'll never see it again. So the smart way to handle your finances is to get a 30-year loan, because the payment is hundreds less per month than it is for a 15-year loan. And that means you send less to the lender. And that means you get to send more to your savings and investments. Yes, cash is king, and liquidity is the goal. The more money you have, the better you can ride out any storm. Oh, sure, it'd be nice to get rid of that mortgage payment, but having no mortgage doesn't mean that you can put food on the table or buy medicine or clothes for the kids. You've heard of people who are house rich and cash poor, and that's an awful situation to be in. Don't let it happen to you. Instead, recognize that there's more to life than your mortgage. So give the lender what the lender demands, but that's it. Send all the rest of your available cash to savings and investments. You'll be far better off that way. Confused about college? A lot of people are. At a recent seminar, we took some Q&A on that very subject.
Hi, Rick.
Hello.
This question concerns college finances and paying for college, not really the planning if you're already in the situation as we are with two high school students and getting ready to fill out the FAFSA application. And any suggestions or advice would be helpful, but in particular, there seem to be quite a few people out there that fill out the forms, that you can pay to fill out the forms. There are financial advisors that are specific for college financial needs, and I'm just curious on your opinions about those things.
College education is a very daunting issue today. It wasn't when we were growing up, but today it is very much on parents' minds. And there is an entire cottage industry of people who devote their careers to helping people fill out the financial aid form, helping them maximize their ability to get student aid, whether it's grants or scholarships or loans. And what's fascinating to me, what I find frankly rather annoying, is that there are so many people spending so much time and energy at figuring out how to qualify for aid and very little effort being exercised to simply lower the costs in the first place. Does that bother anybody else, or is it just me? So the question really becomes, do you really want to spend $30,000 a year on a college education, considering two very important statistics? Here's the first one. 1/3 of college freshmen drop out. 48% of college students graduate within 6 years. Only 48%. Imagine that you're writing a check for $30,000 a year, and you do this for a year or two, only to have the student drop out. My message is not that we shouldn't be sending our kids to college, that your children are not college material. My message very simply is we need to be applying an economic standard to college more so than we did when we went to college 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. We need to recognize that the purpose of going to college is to obtain an education that lands us a degree that prepares us to enter the workforce. And if we are spending $100,000 on that degree and it gets us a career that pays $40,000 a year, there's something wrong there. If we're getting an undergraduate degree that costs $40,000 a year and we end up needing graduate school on top of that, an MBA these days costs $150,000. We need to understand whether or not we're truly helping our children by saddling them with this massive debt they're likely to incur. Are we doing ourselves any good in our retirement planning to raid our 401k, mortgage our house, take second jobs in a desperate effort to give this child the most expensive, I didn't say best, most expensive education available? So the number one thing that I would want you to focus on is how can I lower the cost rather than focusing solely on how can I pay that bill. And if you'll do that, and enroll your child in that conversation, you'll be amazed at how dramatically you can improve on the situation. How do you lower the cost? I can name several ways. 1, work-study programs. 2, the military. 3, employers who help pay for college. 4, work-life scenarios. There are an awful lot of colleges that are increasingly awarding college credit for life experience. Don't go to college at age 18 right out of high school. Let's face it, freshman year of college for most people is nothing more than 13th grade. So go to work for several years, develop a life experience. Number 5, go to a community college for 2 years, and then transfer to that 4-year school where you'll get the degree, because no employer ever says, did you go to school for 4 years here? They only want to know you have the degree. So a community college is an outstanding way to do this much less expensively. Commute, live at home and commute. Half of the cost of college is room and board. And although there's a dramatic importance in the experience of living at college, if it's a choice of going or not, then I would have to choose living at home and commuting versus not going at all. There are a wide variety of ways to go to college and get the degree, to get the job, and we need to look at it very, very differently than we did a generation ago.
Thank you.
I'm considering retiring in the next few years, and I'm feeling like my investments are really scattered. I have 2 401ks and a cash balance account with previous employers. I also have some other investments consisting of Roth IRA and standard IRAs. Is it better to roll over the employer accounts and consolidate all of this under one financial planner, or to leave them individually where they are?
That's a great question, and I'll bet it's one that a lot of people can relate to. Very common for us to find people who have money in IRA accounts scattered all over the place at 3 or 4 different firms. They've got 2 or 3 different 401k plans from former employers. They've just got stuff all over the place. So it makes a great deal of sense to consolidate all of these accounts into one location, which leads us to your second question. Should you put it all with one financial advisor, or should you have different accounts with different advisors? Real simple way to answer that. Who do you want to be the quarterback for all of your financial affairs. If you want to be the quarterback, then it's perfectly fine to have accounts in a variety of different places. But you have to do all the heavy lifting. For example, if you were to give me some of your investments, but not all of them, I'm going to invest the money you give me, but I'm not aware of the money you have invested elsewhere. And the advice I give you might be redundant or in conflict with what you're doing somewhere else. You're also going to be paying fees twice. You're going to be paying fees to me as your advisor and to the next guy who's your advisor. And if you have accounts at 4 or 5 or 6 different places, the redundancy, the conflicts, and the fees simply grow exponentially, and you're the one who has to coordinate all the activities of everybody. All the record keeping, all the transactions, all the tax filing, all the 1099s, you've got to do all that work. On the other hand, if you have one advisor who is working comprehensively on your behalf, that advisor is now responsible for all of those chores. So you simply have to decide how much of a do-it-yourselfer you are. About 20% of the investing public are do-it-yourselfers. They serve as the quarterback. And for them, frankly, this is almost like a hobby. They enjoy doing it. It takes a number of hours per week, and they enjoy it. Other people would rather go to the dentist. And so you've got to decide which you are. It's not a right or wrong question. What we have difficulty with is when we come upon someone who is acting as the quarterback, but they don't know how to play the game. And as a result, they constantly get sacked. So we would encourage you to make a clear decision as to which approach makes most sense for you, and then go accordingly from there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. How much do you know about personal finance? Take my Truth About Money quiz of the day.
A bank CD is pretty much the same as a stock, a bond, neither, both.
Yes, financial advisors everywhere agree. I have a face for radio. I've got proof too. Let's take a look at a segment from my weekly radio show.
I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yes. I've never heard the subject come up, or maybe I missed it, on the advantages or disadvantages, or how do exactly they work, ETFs?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you raised it, because this question, I think, is on a lot of people's minds. What is an ETF?
An ETF, well, it stands for Exchange Traded Fund, and it is effectively a mutual fund that trades like a stock, which is why they call it an exchange-traded fund.
So what's the point?
Well, the point is an exchange-traded fund is a much cheaper version of a traditional mutual fund.
And why is it cheaper?
Well, it's cheaper because they don't have to deal with all the back office junk that a traditional mutual fund company has to deal with.
In other words, a mutual fund company sends you statements. They have an 800 toll-free phone number staffed by clerks to answer your questions, and they have to do all that bureaucratic process. An exchange-traded fund, because you buy it through a brokerage account, they don't have to do any of that.
Well, the brokerage account takes care of all that other bookkeeping stuff, and so the fund company can actually focus on what they do, which is manage the money, so they don't have to pay for all that other junk.
And let me, Bill, elaborate on Anderson's point about it being cheaper. We're talking about substantially cheaper. The typical retail mutual fund in this country charges all in about 3% per year.
Correct.
The typical exchange-traded fund charges about 0.3% per year. Now this is huge. That 2.7% difference is massive, and let me explain why. The typical stock market experience is about 10% a year. If you go back to 1926, according to Ibbotson Associates, the stock market averages about 10% a year. And we know many years it's a lot higher or a lot lower, but on average over the last 80 plus years, 10% a year. If you're paying 3% in fees, you're only netting 7%. But if you pay 0.3%, you net 9.7%. It is massively different in results, and that is the number one advantage of exchange-traded funds. Most 401ks have mutual funds in them, and mutual funds are expensive. If you replace the mutual funds with ETFs, the workers' costs go down by about 90%, which gives them much better net profits in their investments. So if you're not already investing in ETFs, Bill, you should seriously consider it as an alternative to mutual funds.
A bank CD is pretty much the same as a bond.
question I have as it pertains to timing the market, if you will, that what is wrong with the approach of, instead of paying off that debt, keep putting the money into the diversified mutual funds, and then at some point, you know, you've got the debt money in one pocket and you've got the mutual fund money in the other pocket, and then at some point start trading that off and paying for the debt.
Is there a point at which the debt becomes too expensive relative to the returns that you're earning in the portfolio to justify paying off the debt?
Yes, sir.
And yes, I can certainly envision environments like that. I'll give you one classic scenario. Somebody has $5,000 on a credit card at 18% and $5,000 in the bank at 1%. And my advice would be, take the money out of the bank and pay off the credit card. And when I say that to people in that situation, you know what they say to me? But if I do that, I won't have any money. Well, you don't have any money now, you just don't know it. So clearly, we want to do a careful evaluation to verify that there's value in maintaining the debt. I believe that if you are dealing with a scenario where you have both assets and debts, you can manipulate both of them so that they are manageable to continue peacefully coexisting. I don't believe you will ever find yourself in a scenario where the debts are costing so much more than the assets that it makes sense to use the assets to eliminate the debts, eliminating both. I don't think you're going to find that scenario. You'll probably be able to refinance the debt to lower its costs back down, or if the debt is getting more expensive, I'll bet that the investments are earning more to compensate for them. Particularly occurs in an inflationary environment. Remember the 1970s when we had interest rates and inflation rates that were so high? We had an 18% mortgages. We also had 18% CDs. So they tend to go up together and therefore down together. So I think you'll always find an opportunity in a reasonable fashion to keep the two peacefully coexisting. And if it proves to be untrue, if I'm wrong about that, then you would do what you just said. Use the assets to pay down the debt and eliminate it. It's not often you find a baker with a law degree, but that's why I wanted to talk with Warren Brown. He was a successful attorney until he decided to follow his dream, and that dream is to own a company. And so with some credit cards and a $125,000 loan from the Small Business Administration, Warren Brown began CakeLove in 2002 with a single storefront. Today, there are 6 CakeLove stores plus a Love Cafe in the Washington, D.C. area, and he's also the host of Sugar Rush that has appeared on the Food Channel. And Warren has also written 2 best-selling cookbooks. So I'm very excited to have you with us today, Warren.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks
it's very nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us. There's a big difference, lawyers tell me, between studying the law as a student and practicing law as an attorney. And some who loved one hated the other. And those who tended to love law school tend not to love the law.
You have found people who love law school. That's surprising to me. I wasn't one of those people, but I also just didn't find myself in love with the practice of law.
And something else was really under your skin.
It was, and I've always loved food since I was a little boy, and I've cooked since I was a kid, but I never baked. And I wanted to just find out more about food and more about baking and how to work with the ingredients of butter and sugar and eggs and flour. So I set out on a New Year's resolution in 1999 or so, and that was to just start baking. Bake cakes and pies and tarts and cookies, and I was baking in my apartment.
Was it at that point, was it as an avocation, or did you have a plan then to eventually?
Just didn't have a plan.
Okay, so you were just going to start baking as a fun hobby.
I just wanted to do that. I just wanted to know more about food so I could be a well-rounded foodie. Fairly early on, I saw some potential in this because I would travel to different cities for my job as an attorney and go to different bakeries, check them out, and I realized that what I was seeing in other cities, I felt I could make cakes that were better, and I felt that I actually had an opportunity.
That's point number 1 is entrepreneurship, the belief that you can do it better than the other guy.
Yeah, to me, it's like you either make a product less expensive than the market or you make it better. and I wanted to go the route of making it better.
And that's brilliant as well, because those who try to be the low-cost provider, there is always a lower-cost provider.
Really is.
And the guy who's doing it low cost is on a short bootstrapping environment in their house, low cost, no nothing. And you can't grow a business that way.
Right.
And as soon as you move somewhere and start paying rent, somebody else in their basement becomes the low-cost provider, and you lose. So it has to be quality.
I believe so. And that's what people are looking for too when they're going to a small business. They want quality, they want something unique. They don't want like the big box store that they can get at any strip mall. And when I opened the doors to the public, I had a lot of press and media coming my way. It really just gave me a great platform to say to people, announce, here's a product that's much better than the market, it's much different, come in and taste it. And people were really excited. So it was instantly like, heading towards being in the black, and stayed in the black. It was really good.
What surprised you? What occurred over the last 10 years or so that you've been doing this that you didn't anticipate?
The impact of diets.
Really?
Yeah.
How
really.
so?
Well, like there's a diet, the Atkins diet, is really popular in the middle of the last decade, and it really had an impact on us. I mean, almost as strong as like the financial crisis of '08, and that's continued to this day. But it really showed me that people not only count their budget and they count their pennies for when they're going to actually spend, and also count their different occasions, but they count their calories, and they're really concerned about them. And I understand that, of course, because people talk about diets all the time. But we really
How did you
see a
respond?
trend.
How did you respond to that?
We got lucky and just kind of held out. I mean, it's a diet.
You mean you waited for the diet fad to be gone?
Exactly.
As opposed to altering the recipes?
Yeah, because we tried offering lower fat and lower sugar or reduced fat. No one was interested. What we heard from our customers,
if I'm going to eat a cake, I want to eat a great cake.
And they're like, as soon as I come in the shop, I'm off my diet.
So what would your advice be? We always like to leave with some practical steps and tips for our viewers. For folks who are interested in becoming an entrepreneurship, starting a business, what would you say are the couple of things they ought to think about in their effort of doing that?
Line up your financing. Make sure your financing is totally in place before you start signing away your liability.
Do you believe in the adage that the exercise of starting a business always takes twice as long and costs twice as much?
It does. I thought that I could get my first storefront open in 3 to 4 months or so, and it took me 18 months. So it takes a long time to get it going. Any new project takes a long time. I think you have to essentially work 2 jobs for a long time. You got to work whatever it is that you're hopefully employed with so that you can maintain your cash flow just for your living expenses. Then you got to do this other thing, just entrepreneurial ventures you want to have and launch off the ground. But that's something you have to do in the background, basically. So you're working and burning the candle at both ends for a while.
Has it been worth it? Are you glad you're doing what you're doing now?
I think it's worth it. It's in any economic situation where things are going down, you say to yourself, why did I expose myself to this? But it's worth it because I get a lot out of it in my soul and in my heart.
And it's fun to build a business that has as its primary goal making people smile.
It does. Yeah, it is.
Everyone who's enjoying your cake certainly feels that way. Although I have to take you to task for one thing.
What's that?
Warren, you didn't bring me a cake.
Oh. I came from home. I'm sorry.
Well, it just means I'm going to have to stop by the store.
Okay,
thanks, Warren Brown, for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Sometimes I cause spats between married couples. I'm not trying to, but, well, sometimes I do it. So before we go, let me ask you this question. Are you lying to your spouse about your spending? If you're not, there's a good chance that your spouse is lying to you. In 80% of married couples, at least one spouse is spending money that the other doesn't know about. According to an industry study, to have a healthy marriage, you must have healthy finances. And that means you need to be honest about your spending. All spending. Anything above $20. And that's the truth about money. I'm Ric Edelman. Thanks for watching.